The night was deepening as I stepped out of the grocery store, my senses on high alert in the fading twilight. As I walked to my car, all I could think of was why didn't I park closer to the store? I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, my intuition tingling with unease. Glancing over my shoulder, I noticed a man loitering near the store entrance, his eyes fixed on me. A chill crept down my spine. This tall, thin man came running right at me, looking like he was ready to do nothing but harm. The man was yelling, "Hey, hey, hey, you stop!" I couldn't believe what was happening. Hurrying to my car, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being chased. The mysterious man with his dark silhouette trailed me, his presence ominous. Fear twisted in my gut as I accelerated, hoping to leave the stranger behind. But he persisted, his figure a haunting shadow in my rearview mirror. As I bolted out of the store's lot, he pulled up close to the side of my car, shouting, "Pull over." I heard of this happening to other people, but not me. I thought to myself, I'm going to jump lanes and go down the next side street. I noticed in my rearview mirror this guy jumped lanes and is following me down this side street. My heart is racing so fast now, I know for sure this guy is following me. Now I have no other choice but to lose him. At the next red light, I'm going to floor it and run the red light. I looked through the rearview mirror, and the traffic light trick worked. Just as I pulled down my street, that's when I saw the car again. My heart raced as I pulled into my driveway, my mind whirling with terrifying possibilities. I bolted from my car, fumbling for my keys to get inside, praying that the safety of my home would shield me from the impending danger. As I got inside my house, I looked out the window, and the man was still sitting in his car in my driveway. I remembered the gun I just purchased, and thought, should I go out there with my gun and confront this person? But what if he has a gun too? I dialed 911, my trembling voice recounting the harrowing experience. As I waited for the police to arrive, I peered through my window blinds. The stranger was still out there, lurking in the darkness. When the police arrived, they surrounded my house, their flashlights cutting through the night. I watched in terror as they apprehended the mysterious man, the very person I had thought was the threat. As they pulled him away, he shot me a glance filled with concern, a silent plea for understanding. Confused and frightened, I demanded answers. The police, with stern faces, revealed the shocking truth. The man I had feared was not the danger. In fact, he had been trying to protect me. He had noticed the real threat, a sinister figure hiding in my back seat, waiting to strike. The realization hit me like a tidal wave, leaving me stunned and speechless. While I was in the store, a stranger broke into my car and got in the back seat without me seeing him. The man I had perceived as the villain had been my savior all along, a guardian angel in the guise of a stranger. In the aftermath of the terrifying ordeal, I couldn't help but marvel at the unpredictable twists of fate, and the stranger I had feared turned out to be the very person who had saved my life. The rain fell in heavy sheets, mercilessly pounding against the roof of our RV, drowning out the world beyond its metal confines. The night was a murky abyss, swallowing every trace of civilization, leaving us stranded on a forgotten stretch of road that seemed to stretch endlessly into the obsidian void. With each flash of lightning, the skeletal fingers of the trees clawed at the sky, casting eerie shadows that danced menacingly on the wet asphalt. Desperation and fear gnawed at my insides as I glanced at Jane, her face etched with worry. Our vacation, once filled with dreams of adventure, had transformed into a nightmare. Our RV, our mobile sanctuary, had betrayed us, leaving us at the mercy of the raging storm. "We can't stay here, Jane," I said, my voice barely audible above the howling wind. "We need to find shelter. We can't survive the night in this." Nodding in agreement, Jane gripped my hand, her fingers cold as ice. We set out into the storm, raindrops lashing at our faces like 1,000 tiny needles. It felt like hours before we saw a glimmer of warmth through the dark veil of rain, a distant glow emanating from a solitary house that stood defiantly against the storm. Relief flooded through us as we approached the house, the glow from within promising safety from the storm's wrath. Heart pounding, I knocked on the door, but before my knuckles could make contact, it creaked open slowly, revealing a tall man with a welcoming smile. His eyes, however, told a different story. They glowed with an otherworldly light, reflecting the flickering flames from within the house. Come in," he said, his voice soft yet carrying a weight of ancient sadness. "You can't be out there in this weather. Stay the night. Leave in the morning once the storm has passed." Grateful for his kindness, Jane and I stepped inside, our wet clothes sticking to our skin like a second layer of flesh. The interior of the house was surprisingly warm, the flickering light of a roaring fire casting dancing shadows on the walls. The air was thick with the aroma of freshly baked bread, a scent that should have been comforting, but felt oddly out of place in that moment. The man, who introduced himself as Mr. Blackwood, led us further into the house. In a corner of the room, two young girls, Emily and Lily, played quietly, their laughter a stark contrast to the eerie silence of the night outside. As we settled in, Mr. Blackwood regaled us with stories of the house, tales of a bygone era when the world was simpler and kinder. His voice, though soothing, carried an undertone of melancholy, as if he was reminiscing about something lost in time. Despite the strangeness of the situation, exhaustion claimed us and we succumbed to sleep, cocooned by the warmth of the house. Morning came, and with it, a break in the storm. Jane and I thanked Mr. Blackwood and his daughters, our hearts filled with gratitude for their hospitality. We left the house, the memory of that strange, unsettling night lingering in our minds. It wasn't until we arrived at the nearby town and visited the repair shop that the true horror of our experience became apparent. As I recounted the events of the previous night to the mechanic, his eyes widened in disbelief. "There's no way you stayed the night there," he said, his voice hushed. "That man, Mr. Blackwood, used to work here until his house burned down several years ago. He and his two little girls died in that fire. The whole family perished." A chill ran down my spine, and I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Could it have been a dream? A figment of our exhausted minds? But the mechanic's conviction, his sheer terror, painted a different picture. Shaken to our core, Jane and I drove back to the location of the house, hoping against hope that it had all been a misunderstanding, that the house had indeed been real, and our memories were not playing tricks on us. Yet when we arrived, there was no house. Only charred remnants of a tragedy long past, confirming the mechanic's horrifying revelation. The reality of what we had experienced settled over us like a suffocating shroud. Mr. Blackwood and his daughters were no ordinary hosts. They were phantoms of the past, souls trapped in a time and place they could not leave. Their kindness, it seemed, extended beyond the boundaries of the living, offering shelter to lost souls on a rainy, terrifying night. The memory of that night haunts me still, a reminder that sometimes, in the darkest corners of the world, the veil between the living and the dead is thin, and the past reaches out to touch the present in ways that defy explanation. It serves as a chilling reminder that the line between the natural and the supernatural is far more tenuous than we dare to imagine. And as I recount this tale, I can't help but wonder if, somewhere out there, the spirits of Mr. Blackwood and his daughters continue to offer their hospitality to weary travelers. The night was dark and stormy, the wind howling through the trees like a mournful ghost, and rain tapping on the windows like ghostly fingers. I found myself home alone, the comforting presence of my family absent, leaving me to face the eerie sounds of the night in solitude. As the clock struck midnight, the house seemed to come alive with strange noises. Creaks echoed through the halls, and the occasional gust of wind rattled the windows, making me jump at every sound. The rhythmic drumming of rain on the roof became a haunting melody, creating an atmosphere of tension that settled over the house like a heavy fog. I tried to dismiss my fears as mere imagination, a product of the stormy night playing tricks on my mind. But each sound, each creak, seemed to whisper a different story, filling my thoughts with dread. The darkness outside pressed against the windows like a tangible force, obscuring the world beyond in a veil of blackness. I sought refuge in my room, pulling the covers tightly around me as if they could shield me from the unknown. The soft glow of a bedside lamp barely penetrated the darkness, casting eerie shadows that danced on the walls, mimicking the movements of unseen specters. In the silence between the raindrops I heard it, a faint, distant sound that sent shivers down my spine. Footsteps, slow, deliberate footsteps, as if someone were pacing just beyond my line of sight. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat reverberating in my ears as I strained to listen. I called out, my voice barely more than a whisper, hoping it was just a figment of my imagination. "Hello? Is anyone there? The only response was the echoing silence of the house, broken only by the occasional gust of wind and the relentless rain. I mustered the courage to venture out of my room, my steps hesitant as I moved through the darkened corridors. As I passed the hallway mirror, I caught a glimpse of movement behind me. My breath caught in my throat as I turned, my eyes widening in terror. There, in the dim light, I saw a fleeting figure, a shadowy silhouette that seemed to vanish as quickly as it had appeared. A sense of primal fear gripped me, and I fled back to the safety of my room, locking the door behind me. The footsteps grew louder, closer, as if whatever was haunting the house was now right outside my door. I clutched my phone, ready to dial for help, but the battery had died, leaving me isolated and defenseless. The footsteps continued, growing louder and more insistent, as if whatever was out there was searching for me, its unseen eyes fixed on my trembling form. I pressed myself against the wall, my breathing shallow, as the doorknob rattled with sudden force. Cold dread washed over me, realizing that something or someone was trying to get in. I held my breath, praying for the nightmare to end, for the footsteps to fade away into the stormy night. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the sounds ceased. The footsteps receded, becoming fainter and fainter until they were swallowed by the howling wind and the rain-soaked night. I remained huddled in my room, paralyzed with fear long after the storm had passed. The house fell silent, but the memory of those haunting footsteps lingered, etched into my mind like a scar, a chilling reminder of the night I spent alone, tormented by the unknown, and the terrifying possibility that I was never truly alone.